Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare. Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachare. Yamunatira Vanachare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare. Gopi Jana Ballava Giribaradhare. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachare. Yamunatira Vanachare. There's no power. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupad, Paramahangsa, Parivrajacharya, Status Srimad. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Shri Radha Radhanath Ki, Sri Giri Govardhan Ki, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki, Go Premanande. All glories to their assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24. Chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva. Text 22. Mata Brahmara Sosvarya Prishta Roma Latangripam Padma Kosha Rajo Diksho Vikshipat Pavanotsavam Mata Brahma Rasosvarya Rishta Roma Latangripam Padma Kosha Rajo Diksho Vikshipat Pavanotsavam Mata Brahma Rasosvarya Rishta Roma Latangripam Padma Kosha Rajo Diksho Vikshipat Pavanotsavam Mata Brahma Rasosvarya Rishta Roma Latangripam Padma Kosha Rajo Diksho Vikshipat Pavanotsavam. Mataji's. Mata, mad. Brahmara, bumblebees. Sosvarya, with great humming. Hrishta, joyfully. Roma, here on the body. Lata, creepers. Angripam, trees. Padma, lotus flower. Kosha, whirl. Raja, saffron. Diksho, in all directions. Vikshipat, throwing away. Pavana, air. Utsavam, festival. Translation: there were various trees and creepers on all sides of the lake, and there were mad bumblebees humming all about them. The trees appeared to be very jolly due to the sweet humming of the bumblebees, and the saffron, which was contained in the lotus flowers, was being thrown into the air. These all created such an atmosphere that it appeared as though a festival were taking place there. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Trees and creepers are also different types of living beings. When bumblebees come upon trees and creepers to collect honey, certainly such plants become very happy. On such an occasion, the wind also takes advantage of the situation by throwing pollen or saffron contained in the lotus flowers. All this combines with the sweet vibration created by the swans and the calm of the water. The Prachetas consider such a place to be like a continuous festival. From this description, it appears that the Prachetas reached Shivaloka, which is supposed to be situated near the Himalaya mountains. Matta Brahmara Sarsvarya Hrishta Roma Latangri Pam Padmakosha Rajo Diksho Vikshipat Pavanotsavam. There were various trees and creepers on all sides of the lake, and there were mad bumblebees humming all about them. The trees appeared to be very jolly due to the sweet humming of the bumblebees, and the saffron, which was contained in the lotus flowers, was being thrown into the air. These all created such an atmosphere that it appeared as though a festival were taking place there. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presta Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarane Vanchkalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Paditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yes, so as Srila Prabhupada says at the end of the short purport, from this description of this just really beautiful place and really very amazing place, actually, it appears that the Prachetas have reached Shiva Loka. Well, they have, actually. This is the description. It's been going on also for a couple or so verses before. This is Shiva Loka, but the Shiva Loka, which is situated near the Himalayas, there are different Shiva Lokas as there are different forms of Lord Shiva. Actually, let me just inform you of one thing, devotees. You've, I imagine, all noticed by now that His Grace Madan Mohan Prabhu is here with us, visiting us for, a week here, and then we'll go to Joburg, speak, and spend a week there. He is here. Well, what is going to happen is I will say some words for a little while, and then I'll hand over to him. And why is this? What's going on is he is a sannyas candidate. Okay. Yes, very good. And I have been appointed or ordered to sort of, to spend a couple of weeks with him and sort of keep an eye on him. Something along those lines. And I will have to send an evaluation to the sannyas committee, which I'm also a member of. So that's what's going on. That's why he's here. And of course, he's really a nice devotee, as I imagine you've gathered already. And get his association and listen carefully. But anyway, in whatever it is, maybe, 15 minutes or 20 or something like that, I'll hand over to him, and maybe I will vacate the seat. But one way or another, he'll come up here, and then he will say some words further about this verse and purport. And tomorrow, he is giving the class, the whole class. And I'll just be sitting and listening. Maybe not quite that sort of mood, but, taking it in. So anyway, here we have the description. Well, this is all in the context of the activities of the Prachetas, the sons of King Prachinabarhi. It was explained, a bit more than a week, like 10 days ago, I remember. I gave one class on one of the previous verses that Prachin means east, and Barhi means Kushagras. So Prachinabarhishat means the one who planted Kushagras facing the east, just by the way. That's where the name Prachinabarhishat came from, and the Prachetas are his sons, 10 of them. And they are just really, really nice devotees and just really enthusiastic and very deep appreciation for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and anything to do with him. And at some point they left home and started moving around here and there. And now they're moving around in the area or the vicinity of the Himalayas, and they just they just come upon this very beautiful forest park type of scene, just way beyond what any of us have experienced, even in the Japanese garden. You went there, didn't you? Which is nice. It's pleasant. But this scene, oh, Krishna, is just, it is actually another world. although it's within the material world, but it's just another level of beauty and all sorts of, just wonderful different features within the material world, but way beyond what we see, even in particularly nice park-type areas. It's really, it is a heavenly scene. It is actually a heavenly scene, but within the material world. So yes, it is Shivaloka, which is, Prabhupada says, supposed to be situated near the Himalaya mountains. There are different forms of Lord Shiva, and those different forms of Lord Shiva, they sort of frequent different places, generally extremely nice places. Srila Prabhupada in Caitanya Charitamrita, the chapter about the glories of Advaita Acharya, Srila Prabhupada discusses there in one purport about Lord Shiva and different levels of Lord Shiva. And Prabhupada makes the point that the original form of Lord Shiva basically is a type of pastime form of Lord Vishnu and has a Vaikuntha planet. And he is known as Sadashiva. Sadashiva in a very literal sense means the eternal Lord Shiva. This Lord Shiva, who is in this particular area of his, Shivaloka, which is near the Himalaya mountains, just on this planet, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Yeah, this Lord Shiva, along with Lord Brahma, when it comes to the end of Brahma's life, they die. This form of Lord Shiva actually passes away, just like Lord Brahma does. But that Sada Shiva, that original form, which is really, look, you can look it up there and see how Prabhupada explains it. But this is the basic sense that it is a form. He is a form of Lord Vishnu. Of course, we, I think, are familiar with the descriptions given in Brahma Samhita, the description of Lord Shiva as a type of form, so to speak, of Lord Vishnu, but not exactly, but still, it's very Achintya Bheda Bhed type of description. He is like yogurt compared to milk. Yes, and the idea is that milk in terms of taste, there are different types of edible or drinkable things, and they fall into different categories in terms of the type of taste they have. Like rice is sweet. Rice is sweet, for example. And milk is also sweet. Milk is sweet. But yogurt is not sweet. Yogurt is, technically, it's sour, which is another one of there's a number of specific types of tastes. And Lord Chaitanya, of course, he liked any prasadam which was prepared and offered with devotion and like that. But he particularly liked sukta. And there's the Caitanya Charitamrita somewhere, and Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's a description of how one devotee made sukta, which is sort of sour to bitter, astringent, in that sort of region of taste. But Lord Chaitanya had some of the sukta, and he just found it to be just wonderful. And I forget exactly the words he used, but he basically said something along the lines that anyone who can make sukta like this, I don't know, maybe they're going back to Godhead, or they're definitely extremely special. There's no doubt about it. Although for some, sukta is an acquired taste. In many cases, you don't just, if someone gives you some laddu or something along those lines, or something like chum chum, if you're familiar with chum chum, if you're not, you're missing out. Maybe you've wasted 10% of your life, but you can always catch up by going to the Giriraj sweet shop in Goa downtown and getting some of their Malai chum chum, which as far as I'm concerned is the best, at least on this planet. But anyway, so that's the description in the Brahma Samhita, that Lord Shiva, that Lord Vishnu is like milk, but Lord Shiva is like yogurt. And there are different aspects to the understanding, but the first thing is that you can make yogurt out of milk, but you can't make milk out of yogurt. It's permanent. It's permanently transformed. Although milk and yogurt, they're sort of the same thing, give or take, or something along those lines. Yeah, but still, yogurt is fixed. You can make different things out of yogurt. You can make Srikhand, but Srikhand is yogurt, of course, which has been drained of like the real liquid, but then it's been mixed with sugar. But milk is just sweet. Of course, you can also add sugar to milk and make it even sweeter. But basically, the taste is sweet. Like rice, the taste is sweet, although it may be a little difficult to really perceive. So yeah, milk is sweet, yogurt is sour. Yeah, but you can make many things out of milk. And Krishna, of course, Krishna is Makhan Chor, he's the butter thief, but he's also occasionally referred to as Dahi Chor, means the yogurt thief. He likes yogurt. He really likes yogurt. Back many years ago, in my childhood actually, like between 60 and 70 years ago, my mother yogurt appeared. There had not been yogurt really, in New Zealand at least. But then my mother got into yogurt. I'd never seen it before. She gave me some, and I thought, this is not really for me. Because, it's sour. But, it's an acquired taste, and once you get into it, it's great. And of course, it's very good for the health. But Lord Shiva's like that. He's a type of form of Lord Vishnu. He's not just like us. We are a different type of living entity. he's kind of a form of Lord Vishnu, but he has permanently been placed in a certain state, which is really quite different from the state of Lord Vishnu. And therefore, he and his different forms, they are in the category of Shiva Tattva, not in the category of Vishnu Tattva specifically, but they are Shiva Tattva. And Prabhupada and different of our acharyas have commented that to really understand Shiva Tattva is not easy. It's not easy. It doesn't just begin and end with Lord Shiva in this Shiva Loka, which is supposed to be situated near the Himalaya mountains. There's a lot more to it than that, to Shiva Tattva. But anyway, here, as in the previous verse, and probably in the verse prior to that, I just looked at the previous verse. Yeah, and the previous verse too. Just beautiful description. It's really nice. What a beautiful place. And the Prachetas, when they arrived there, they were just really struck. The trees appeared to be jolly. Have you seen a jolly tree before? Not exactly. At least I haven't. But the trees appeared to be jolly. Yeah, and the wind was jolly also, was throwing pollen around, or saffron, which it got from in the whorls of the lotus flowers. So it's just really nice. And a sweet vibration created by the swans. And then the calm of the water. Well, it's heavenly. It certainly is. Even just by definition, Shiva Loka is heavenly. Yeah, just really wonderful and very beautiful. And the Prachetas are really struck by this. So, well, and it goes on. Amazing. In the next few verses, wow. Anyway, come to Bhagavatam class tomorrow and find out more about it. But I am going to hand over now to His Grace Madan Mohan Prabhu. And doesn't he speak English so well? He speaks like a real, we would say he's actually Russian by birth, but we would say he speaks like a what? Nastayashi Anglichanin. Something like that. Or like a real Britisher.
Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshavan Meritam Yanatasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Thank you, Maharaj, for having extolled the glories of Lord Shiva. And we may wonder why these descriptions of very beautiful scenery are included in the Bhagavatam. Of course, one of the reasons is to give the previous speakers, Kshudi Prabhu, Shrutakirti Prabhu, Medavi Prabhu, an opportunity to connect everything that is there spoken in the Bhagavatam with Srila Prabhupada. They all did it in their own way, and I was yesterday wrapped in attention listening to Shrutakirti Prabhu's discussion of how everything in the Srimad Bhagavatam reminds us of Lord Krishna's pure devotees. Bhagavatam, one meaning of the word Bhagavatam is a book that speaks about the glories of the Lord, Bhagavan, but another meaning is that Bhagavatam speaks about the glories of his devotees, Bhagavatas, and both meanings are included in the name Srimad Bhagavatam. And because such descriptions are intimately connected with a pure devotee of the Lord Shiva, they also have deep spiritual meaning. Just like an example given, I believe, by Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, there are verses spoken not by Krishna, not by Arjuna, but by Dhritarashtra, by Sanjaya, by Duryodhana. And he asks a question on our behalf. Why are these verses spoken not exactly by pure devotees, actually by opponents of pure devotees? Why are they included? And he explains that because they're in the context of Krishna and Arjuna's discussions, they become infused or steeped in the overall spiritual potency. And he gives the example, just like a salt mine, everything falls into the salt mine because it becomes salty by association. In the same way, all such descriptions in the Bhagavatam, even though apparently they may not appear to be very philosophical or spiritual, maybe taken in isolation, they might even distract, someone may say, our attention from spiritual topics. It is dangerous, actually, to become attached even to the mode of goodness. Yesterday, Shrutakirti Prabhu explained about how Srila Prabhupada would always be very calm and peaceful, very sattvic. Even when he chastised his disciples, somehow the effect of his anger was purifying, unlike ordinary material anger, which contaminates the one who manifests it and the one at whom anger is directed. But we also reminded by Jiva Goswami that if we become too attached to beautiful scenery, he gives this explanation in the example of Narada Muni. In his previous life, he explained how after receiving the instructions of the Bhagavatas, or Mahabhagavatas, Bhaktivedantas, he went on to meditate, and he sat under a tree, and he carefully chose his place of meditation. He really liked the place. The place actually looked like the one we've just read about, with beautiful lotuses and ducks and birds of water and a nice tree. So he chose that place and sat down to meditate. And then the Lord appeared in his heart, but then he disappeared, explaining that you are too immature. Avipakva means you are not really ready yet to be able to see me. And Jiva Goswami explains that the contamination that Narada in his previous life still retained was his attachment to the mode of goodness. He chose the place too carefully, and he liked the place too much. And therefore, the Lord, picking up on that contamination by the mode of goodness, he said, okay, I gave you my darshan once, but only to encourage you to continue in the same direction, and you won't see me, regrettably, in this lifetime. And I regret it as much as you do. We'll see each other next lifetime. So, Srila Prabhupada also explains, even actually towards the end of his presence in this world, I don't know if Shrutakirti Prabhu was present there in 1977 in October when Srila Prabhupada was dictating his last purports on Srimad Bhagavatam. There is a video footage of him lying down on the bed, and someone is holding the microphone very close to his lips, and Prabhupada barely audibly dictates his last purports on Srimad Bhagavatam. It's on the 13th chapter, text 53, when he says, Rajaguna, Tamaguna are very destructive, very dangerous if someone becomes influenced by those gunas. And he might lose his chance to become Krishna conscious in this lifetime. And he says, therefore we must maintain Sattva Guna. But then he goes on to explain the exact way how he would recommend or instruct his disciples and his followers to maintain Sattva Guna. In a Vaishnava way, he said, and therefore we must come to Mangalarati, must listen to Srimad Bhagavatam, must worship Shri Radha and Krishna or Shri Radha Radhanath. And that's how we maintain Sattva Guna, necessary and conducive for spiritual life. So one way to look at this verse description of the beautiful scenery of Lord Shiva's abode is to remind ourselves that Sattva Guna is very necessary and very conducive for spiritual life. Actually, Krishna in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, analyzing the three modes of nature, he says that the mode of ignorance must be rejected forcibly. It has to be forcibly, what's the word I'm looking for? Rejected, pushed away from one's life, because if we tolerate it, it takes advantage and spreads, just like fungus or something like that. And then the mode of rajas, Krishna says, has to be tolerated. It cannot be counteracted with force. And then it grows more active and more aggressive. But then the mode of goodness must be maintained by all means. But then another way to look at this verse is to remind ourselves that anything connected with Lord Krishna's pure devotees becomes pure by association. Lord Krishna himself explains in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam to Uddhava, when Uddhava, apprehending Krishna's departure, Krishna was going to leave this world very soon, and Uddhava was beside himself with anguish and apprehension about Krishna's departure. So to pacify Uddhava, Lord Krishna told him, whatever is connected with me, or whoever is connected with me, has the potency to remind others who are deprived of my association about me. And sometimes association with them is even more powerful than association with me personally. Actually, Krishna likes to depend on his devotees and the things connected with him to remain present in the lives of devotees, even though he himself is absent. Srila Prabhupada even says something very important and very paradoxical in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. He says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely self-sufficient, but the most important manifestation or feature of his self-sufficiency is that he likes to depend on his devotees. That's his ultimate self-sufficiency. He makes the devotees his own, indistinguishable from him for all intents and purposes, and then relies on them, on such devotees. Tvayo payukta saragandha vaso lankara charchitach uchishta bojana dasas tayo mayam jayamahi, he tells Uddhava, whatever is used by me or whoever submitted to my service takes upon the power to protect others from the onslaught of my material energy. My garlands, the fragrances I used, the remnants of my food, the clothes I wore, or my devotees. And when we associate with the devotees who have submitted themselves or surrendered to Srila Prabhupada's service, and their entire being is permeated by Prabhupada's presence, they're just the vehicles of Prabhupada's presence in this world. Again, Shrutakirti Prabhu, I couldn't have enough of your discussions on Srila Prabhupada, Kshudri Prabhu, or Medhavi Prabhu. When you speak about Prabhupada, somehow Prabhupada appears. We don't feel separation from him. In some way, maybe it's too bold a thing to say. In some way, I think our generation of devotees is more fortunate than yours, for a couple of reasons. One of them is that we didn't have to live through Srila Prabhupada's departure. And another reason is that somehow you managed to bring Prabhupada back to our lives in such a way that we don't feel not just separated, but somehow distant from him. I think your generation somehow managed to distill Prabhupada in such a way that when we associate with you, hear from you, serve you, Prabhupada becomes so present and so clear, so attractive. Just like Prabhupada himself writes in Krishna book, he says, Krishna by himself is not particularly beautiful. That's a very interesting thing to say, because Krishna is supposed to be all attractive, but then Prabhupada says, by himself he is not particularly beautiful, just kind of average, kind of looking Krishna. But when he's surrounded by his devotees who manage to beautify him and also create the capability in us to see his beauty, because that also takes a special quality, to be able to see the beauty and see Krishna through it. Just like Shrutakirti Prabhu yesterday was referring to one devotee in the morning walk who started being distracted by crabs, and Prabhupada remarked on his distraction that he is not very serious, he won't last long. But when we associate with devotees of Krishna, somehow they manage to give the eyes, Chakudan Dilajay, Janme Janme Prabhu say, the eyes to see Krishna and the eyes to see him in a way that inspires our devotion towards him. In the same way, when we associate with Prabhupada's disciples, actually I must confess, Shrutakirti Prabhu, I was weaned on your Srila Prabhupada Vachas. You remember? That was about, 30 years ago? When you started posting your snippets of remembrances of Srila Prabhupada on Pamho. And it would come every now and then. You had that, even a conference, I think, Srila Prabhupada Vacha, and you would post snippets of what would later become your What's the Difficulty book. So I couldn't have enough, and I would always look forward to the next one. I would read them, because by that time I had already read Prabhupada Lilamrita, but we had very few books about Srila Prabhupada back then. It was about 1996, 1995, or thereabout. Srila Prabhupada's Vachas, you remember? And I couldn't have enough. And every time a Prabhupada Vacha would come, I would just devour it. And then I would share it with devotees. The one I remember was about hatchets. Remember when the devotee would just, it was you were referring to yourself, would just come to Prabhupada's room and just quickly bow down in a kind of chopping way because you were busy serving, and Prabhupada once remarked, what is this hatchet kind of thing? Bow down properly and offer pranama, chant pranama mantra out loud, like that. So, whatever is connected with Srila Prabhupada and whoever is connected with Srila Prabhupada, he or she assumes that ability to remind us of him in a way that inspires us to follow their suit and become as devoted as they are to Srila Prabhupada without even seeing him physically. So it's our great fortune to be in the presence of His Holiness Bhakti Caitanya Maharaj, Shrutakirti Prabhu, Medhavi Prabhu, Shuddhi Prabhu. Again, I really loved your class when you gave that multiple choice Krishna Katha kind of thing. Really keeps you plugged in and connected and on the edge of your seat. And Srila Prabhupada manifests through you to us and manifests his different qualities, just like Krishna empowers some of his disciples, some of his devotees to manifest different qualities. Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu also manifested his different qualities through his disciples and then devotees, and then he would glorify them for what he has actually invested in them. In the same way, Srila Prabhupada, in one class I remember, he all of a sudden opens up explaining how a guru feels. Medhavi Prabhu in his class on Chaitanya Charitamrita explained that a guru is not supposed to be considering himself a guru. He should see himself as to be a transparent medium. So his disciples could see through him his Guru Maharaj. But then Srila Prabhupada goes even further. In his class he says, he refers to the feelings of Ishvara Puri towards Lord Chaitanya, who gave him, Lord Chaitanya, he received an instruction to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. His spiritual master chastised him, if, of course, we believe Lord Chaitanya, he did, that he chastised him, saying, you're a fool, you cannot study Vedanta, you cannot even touch it. All you have to do is chant Hare Krishna. Then he did as told, chanted Hare Krishna, and then he came back with the result. He said, Guru Maharaj, what kind of mantra have you given me? When I started chanting it, somehow I feel mad. Sometimes I fall down on the ground, sometimes I roll, and the tears come down from my eyes. Maybe I have become deranged. What kind of mantra have you given me? And then the spiritual master, Prabhupada explains, embraced him, titling. He said, my dear child, you are very fortunate, you have developed Krishna Prema. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that whenever a disciple gets some spiritual or so-called spiritual experience, he should refer to the spiritual master asking what he should do with it, rather than just assuming that he has developed some higher levels of devotional service. So Prabhupada explains in his class, this is how a spiritual master feels. And then all of a sudden Prabhupada says, hey, and I feel sometimes when I look at my disciples who are doing so nicely, I feel I'm such a nonsense about himself. Somehow I'm nonsense, but I'm useless. But this boy or this girl, they have followed my instructions nicely, and they have become such nice devotees. That's how a spiritual master feels. He says he never feels envious of the progress of his disciples. Rather, he feels that as his success. And of course, he even says something in the 4th canto of Bhagavatam. He says, I don't hope to go back to the spiritual world myself, but if one of my disciples becomes as powerful, spiritual as Dhruva Maharaj, then I have a hope that he will take me back to the spiritual world. Like that. So, Tvayopayukta Saragandha, which means whatever was used in Krishna's service becomes spiritually potent, and we can say safely, in the same words, about Prabhupada's disciples, not just those who are kind of up front and center, those who have taken a lot of responsibilities upon themselves, but even those who have been sidelined or who haven't been so much around. When in the course of our Give Prabhupada project we get in touch with them, we can see that Prabhupada is very much alive. Comes through the eyes as there are tears and appreciation and immediate influx of emotions about their service to Prabhupada. So this verse is one such reminder that Lord Shiva and whatever is connected with him is spiritually potent. And Srila Prabhupada also managed to show the same, display the same magic, I would say, by manifesting many Shiva lokas or Vaikuntha lokas, as he himself referred to his temples. Was in Hyderabad that he was saying, this is not Hyderabad, this is Vaikuntha loka. This is not Durban, this is not Moscow or New York or Washington, you name it. These are all outposts or embassies of the spiritual world. And I want to conclude that when I walked into this temple, Durban, for the first time in my life, I was very much impressed with the serenity and the beautifulness and beauty and calmness of this place. You have a lake, you have beautiful trees growing around. I'm not sure about bumblebees, I haven't seen any. You definitely have monkeys and some beautiful, sweet-sounding birds. Prabhupada explains that birds, their chirping is Krishna's whisper. In other words, Krishna manifests the beauty of his spiritual world through his devotees and through the places connected with them. And Srila Prabhupada continues to establish such beautiful places around the world, both in terms of his temples and in terms of his devotees, disciples who follow his instructions. And by getting in touch with them, we become purified, just like the Prachetas felt purified by being in that wonderful surrounding. If I may be allowed to finish, I probably have gone over time, just one short episode which will bring this point home and connect it not just with the spiritual world in our Shiva Loka, but also with the mission of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu that Srila Prabhupada came to give us. And that's a quote from Caitanya Charitamrita. In the second chapter of Caitanya Charitamrita, second verse of Adilila, the translation goes, O my merciful Lord Chaitanya, may the nectarian Ganges waters of your transcendental activities flow on the surface of my desert-like tongue. Beautifying these waters are the lotus flowers of singing, dancing, and loud chanting of Krishna's holy name, which are the pleasure abodes of unalloyed devotees. These devotees are compared to swans, ducks, and bees. The rivers flowing produces a melodious sound that gladdens their ears. And I will just read 2 sentences from Srila Prabhupada's purport on this verse. It's a wonderful purport, actually. I'm tempted to read it all, but then we'll go over time. And the 2 sentences I wanted to read, and I am encouraging you to please read the entire commentary on your own. It's Adirila 2.2. For this reason, people from all parts of the world must call for the devotees of Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who are compared to swans, swimming around the beautiful lotus feet of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, or bees humming around his lotus feet in transcendental pleasure, searching for honey. The soul can be solaced only by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his many bona fide devotees who never leave the lotus feet of the Lord to become imitation Mahaprabhus, but all cling to his lotus feet like bees that never leave a honey-soaked lotus flower. So that's the description of Lord Chaitanya's movement, and now we can, reading these verses, remember something very relatable and relevant for us in terms of Lord Chaitanya's mission given to us by Srila Prabhupada in the most beautiful way. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions?
Thank you to both of you for speaking so beautifully on the verse. But I was just intrigued, Maharaj, when you said that Madan Mohan is a sannyas candidate and you are in charge of looking after him or looking over him. So this must be a new introduction by the GBC for the progression of more sannyasis within the movement, which is very important. But I just wondered, I mean, what we do in the corporate world is similar, work shadow and having a mentor for newcomers. But then there is a set criteria by which you evaluate the candidate. So I'm just wondering, I mean, Madan Mohan seems a really nice devotee, and how would you make an analysis which is unbiased in terms of your evaluation to the sannyas committee for the progression of Madan Mohan Prabhu?
Unbiased. I am biased because I've known him for a long time, at least 30 years, and he's just really nice, and I think he's great. So what can I say? But we're meant to evaluate, in terms of, it's like knowledge, devotion, and renunciation. These for sannyasis, these things, knowledge, devotion, and renunciation, these are vital things. Yeah, so anyway, don't worry, I'm thinking about it. I was listening and thinking, yeah, it's in there. Is that okay?
Hare Krishna. Madan Mohan Prabhu, can you give a little more clarity on tolerating the mode of passion? You said we should tolerate passion.
There's no clarity, just practice. It takes practice to tolerate it. Of course, tolerance by itself doesn't come easily, and in Krishna consciousness, we tolerate it by developing a higher taste, which makes the urges of the senses not just tolerable, but kind of, what's the word Kirti Prabhu used the other day? Superfluous? Superfluous means unnecessary and not even worth looking at. There's a statement in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Kapila Deva says that Jnana Varagya Yuktina Bhakti Yuktina Chatmana Paripashyat Udasinam Prakritim Chahataurjasam. He says if someone engages in devotional service, especially under the guidance of a spiritual master, or spiritual masters, plural, devotees like Shiksha Gurus and Diksha Guru and so many other gurus, then his or her devotion becomes naturally infused with jnana, which means realized knowledge, not just information, but knowledge that inspires us to do the right thing in devotional service, and vairagya, which means healthy, natural renunciation, which can be compared to the renunciation of a grown-up child who looks upon his toys just like toys, irrelevant, nice, cute, quaint, but irrelevant. In the same way, he says, Paripashyatya dasinam, such a devotee becomes able to see the world for what it is. And prakritim chahataurjasam, and in reciprocation, the material nature, being pleased with such respect shown to her as Krishna's energy, she lets him go. Udasinam means prakritim chahataurjasam, she lets him go, like Prabhupada explains when Krishna tells Maya, let him alone. From that point onwards, she lets him alone. Of course, that shouldn't be taken for granted. And sometimes the devotee is too quick to think that he or she have become free from the onslaughts of temptations. Therefore, Prabhupada says in one of his purports that no one should consider himself to be liberated in the presence of the opposite sex. even though he is liberated. Like Prabhupada himself was a good, wonderful example. When Pishima came to him and his sister, and she was also his god sister as well, and she was sitting in his room, and the disciples all of a sudden left the room and started leaving the room. On the way out, Prabhupada told them, admonished them in English, because she didn't understand English, but he told them, why are you leaving me alone with a woman? She was like a Mahabhagavati devotee, and his sister, elderly, she even looked like Prabhupada. But he reminded them very sternly how one should be very careful. So this should be maintained, but in the meantime, by doing devotional service, especially chanting the Hare Krishna mantra in the morning with attention and feeling and the deep dependence on the mercy of the holy name, one can feel relieved, naturally developing proper attitude towards all such temptations. And of course, being in the association of devotees is the safest thing in the world. So that by itself, because again, it's stated in the Bhagavatam that Vilaja Manaya Yasyast Hatam Ikshapatemaya, that Maya she shies away from Krishna's glance. Whenever Krishna glances, Maya cannot stand there. And Krishna always looks upon his devotees. Therefore, being in the association of devotees is the safest thing to be in this world. This is the safest position to be in this world. I don't know, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. It kind of like, at first glance, the mode of passion seems the best because you get the nectar in the beginning. But it sounds, are you saying something similar to the 16th verse of the second chapter? Krishna says that the self-realized souls have seen that of the non-existent, the material, there's no endurance, and of the eternal, there's no cessation. So by studying this and experience, they lose interest in the temporary things. Kind of like that, because the first instance, the mode of passion is the best. You get the nectar right away. But then you get poisoned later. So is it kind of like that? Along those lines?
Thank you, Kshudi Prabhu. Yeah, it's kind of like that. Ubayosa pidrishtantas. They look at the end. They know what's going to happen. Just like it was a nice, very little story. A man wanted to see the latest blockbuster in the cinema, and he came late. And the person who checks tickets at the entrance wouldn't let him in. It was like a criminal blockbuster or something. Very kind of suspenseful, very popular, and people who have watched it wouldn't tell the others what the plot is about and who is the culprit, who is the murderer. So he came late, but then he asked the person at the entry, could I please get in? And for a small fee, sometimes they let you in with a flashlight. They show you the seat. They usher you in and guide you. So he did that in the darkness of the cinema. And then he sat in his seat, and the person, conductor, whatever, he expected to be paid for it. But the person wouldn't pay. And the cinema official, frustrated, he leaned over to his ear and he whispered, the druggist, the pharmacist, is the murderer, and he walked away. He spoiled the whole thing for him. So now there's no point sitting through the cinema, because he knows the plot, the intrigue. Yeah. So the same way devotees disillusion us by saying what's going to happen. Like Prabhupada, once a palmist came, I think in Mayapur, maybe Shutakirti Prabhu again, you remember Prabhupada, when he was checking the palm of devotees, and he wanted to check Prabhupada's palm. He said, no, I'm done with these things. But you can check the palms of my disciples. And he did, and many of them became frustrated and scared by the reading. That's why I never go to astrologers. They have the knack of scaring you and depressing, creating a depressing impression. But then they came to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, don't you worry, when you clap your hands in front of Krishna, the lines of your palms get erased or changed. But we know, I can read everyone's palm. It's birth, death, disease, and death. You don't have to be palmist for that. So that's what devotees do. They disillusion us in a nice way and keep us inspired in devotional service by giving both, as Prabhupada put it in his letter to Atreya Rishi, devotees are very skeptical about the material world, but very optimistic about the spiritual prospects. So this is what association with pure devotees brings us.
I find the one that helps too in the end of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is talking about lust. He says that you must conquer it in the very beginning by using deliberate spiritual intelligence. So deliberate means you think, okay, this is what I do and this is what I get, more or less the cost to benefit. And when you deliberate on it and you see that the cost of getting involved in the mode of passion is so much worse than the small benefit you get, then of course it starts to lose interest. But we need to think things through before we act on them. Deliberate means you add it up. This is what I'm doing, this is what I'm getting, before we do it.
And that's why we should stay within the range of deliberation, because if we come too close and become pulled in, just like Krishnadas Kaviraj says, you should avoid the whirlpools of in unfavorable situations. That's the word he used, the whirlpools, because if a good swimmer comes close to a whirlpool in the river, he or she gets pulled down and die. So, what's that? Caution is the best part of valor, or something like that?
Discretion is the best part of valor.
Discretion, that's right, yeah, discretion.